lots of evil plans to make you its possession, and it will if we let it destroy everybody. We all must take precautionary measures. If love and peace you treasure, then you'll hear me when I say, oh, oh, that love in need of love today. Don't delay, send yours in right away. Hey, hey, going round, breaking many hearts. Stop it, please, before it's gone too far. People, you know that love in need of love today. Don't delay, send yours in right away. You know that hate's going round, breaking many hearts. Stop it, please, before it's gone too far. It's up to you, 'cause love in need of love today. Don't delay, send yours in right away. You know that it's going round, breaking. It's tried to break my heart every time. Don't, you've got to start a thing before love in need. Oh, love, today. Don't delay, send yours in right away. You know that hate's going around, it's going around, hate's going around. They try bring it up many hearts. You've got to, I've got to, they've got to, we've got to, they've got to, we've got to stop it before it's gone too far. Love to me, oh love. Did you ever think that love would be in need of love today? Don't delay, send yours in right away. Ooh, hey, hey, bring it down a little. Love is very peaceful, so bring it down a little. Yeah, 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 yeah. World Stop walking around here unprepared. Stop being scared. Stop doing all the crazy things you do that ain't you. Stop wasting precious time you have complaining about your circumstance, believing that you're what you're going through that ain't you. Don't you remember who you are? Don't you remember? And even after all this time, please tell me why you don't know what you're here to do. Did you know that when I made you, you are pure love? Did you know that when I made you, you were whole? Did you know that you are born of pure divinity, a true mystery to unfold?
Hello, hello, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. So right here and right now, wherever you are, let us take a deep breath into our bodies, breathing in the breath of life and exhaling. And again, let us take a deep breath in and we exhale. And as we take this next breath in, we breathe out. I invite you to put your hand on your heart and affirm this word. I am here now. I am here now. I am here now. And so using the focused attention of our breath, we now allow this affirmative mind treatment to enter into our subconscious mind where it will do the work that needs to be done easily and effortlessly. As we breathe in and breathe out, we are remembering that the breath is our anchor. As we breathe in and we breathe out, we remember that the breath brings us back to center. As we breathe in and we breathe out, we align ourselves and we bring the focus of our attention now. From this place of awareness, from this now moment, I remember that there is one mind, one power, one presence, one good, one love that is back up, behind, underneath all things. It is the foundation of life. It is the ground of all being. It is the unified field. It is that thing which does not exhaust itself. It is indistinguishable. It cannot be pushed out or blotted out in any way. And I remember that it is right here, right now. This space is filled and overflowing with the good that God is. I call it Mother, Father, God, for I recognize it as the source. I call it Mother, Father, God, for I recognize that it is the creative source. I call it Mother, Father, God, because I recognize it is that thing from which all things come into being, including me. I recognize that I am good, God's good idea, including you. I recognize that you are God's good idea. For in truth and in absolute truth, we are one with it and one of it, created in its likeness and image. You have been created in love's likeness and image. Love created you loving. You have been created in the image of holiness. Holiness created you holy. You have been created in the image of perfection. Perfection created you perfect. You have been created in ease. Yes. Ease created you easing and easy. And it is from this place of awareness that I now speak this word in faith, knowing that the God Talk Sunday, the God Talk conversation that will take place on this morning is good. I declare and decree right here and right now that all fear is cast away and gone back into the sea of nothingness. I declare and decree that right here, that panic has no presence in this space. Yes. And in this place right here, right now, I will not be afraid. I will not fear. For I know whose and who I am. I recognize that this moment in history is just a moment. And we move from this moment back into the absolute awareness of love's presence. We move from this moment into the absolute awareness that all is well in truth. We move from this moment into the absolute awareness that we are protected, we are safe, and we are secure From this knowing, from this awareness, I now release this prayer in absolute expectation, knowing that it is already done. So I rejoice now. I say thank you now. And I live in absolute gratitude. And together we lift up our voices and we say, Amen.
Amen.
Ashe.
Ashe.
And so it is.
So it is.
So it is. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Happy Sunday again. It is good to see you. It's good to be here with you. We have folks that are here with us connected on Zoom. We are also streaming live on our YouTube channel. So however you are connecting to us, we're happy to be here with you. So we're going to talk about a bunch of things today, and really we want to support you in holding and knowing the truth in the midst of this global pandemic. It can't be said enough. We want everyone to please be safe, heed the directions that we've been given. We are continuing to share those directions. We're continuing to stay in contact with the mayor's office here in New York, with the governor's office. We'll be on another phone call with them, and we will continue to share that information that is pertinent, that relates to our general safety and well-being. And so we are happy to see your faces, knowing that each and every one of you are well and doing well in the midst of this global pandemic. So many of you may not have participated in the God Talk before, and I'm excited for you to participate in the God Talk. What this is a forum. It's a place where we knew from the very beginning, before CSC was created, that we needed to create a space where folks could ask questions. You hear and you learn these principles, but then a global pandemic shows up. Okay, Pastor Greg. Okay, Pastor Yolanda. Tell me about this truth now. What this all is well mess y'all been talking about. How is all is well now, right? And so we recognize that there needs to be an opportunity to be able to dialogue and ask real questions about real things that are going on. What I absolutely know to be true and what I believe is that the truth, as we teach it and as we know it, is really irrelevant if we can't use it in times of crisis. The truth, as we know it, it's really irrelevant. It has no place. It has no purpose if I can't apply it when I'm feeling despair, if I can't apply it when something like this is going on. And what life has continued to prove to me, prove to us, is that these teachings work in all circumstances.
Under all conditions.
Under all conditions.
Because we live unconditionally.
Absolutely. So one of the things we'll be doing as well, I've started a document, and we'll share some things today, of sermons and sermon series that are absolutely applicable to this time that we've been living in. We have a deep well of sermons and teachings across the past 7 years, speaking to this very thing of how do we hold the truth in the midst of crisis? How do we hold the truth in the midst of fear and panic and despair? So we'll be sharing some of those and also emailing out a more complete list with you all. Last thing I'll say is that we've set up an email address, just because with so many people connecting in so many different ways, if you have questions, something that you want us to address today, email that question to godtalk@celebration.sc.org. Celebration, S as in spiritual, C as in center.org. And we'll be monitoring that and we'll grab your questions. I think that's it for now. PY, you want to share something about how the God Talk works?
Yes, for those of you who have never had the opportunity to be with us live and in person, the God Talk, as PG said, is something that we envisioned from the very beginning. And it's an opportunity for us to come together, talk about these ideas or questions that we have, concerns that we have around these teachings. But there's some ground rules that we always use every Sunday that we do the God Talk. The first is, this is not a therapy session. It's an opportunity for us to come together to talk about spiritual ideas. And many times it is from a psycho-spiritual perspective or from a metaphysical perspective, but it's not counseling. We might even suggest that you pursue that in addition to this conversation. The second thing about God Talk is, and it's becoming even more important now, that we listen collectively from the we. We're learning how, through our distance from each other, to be more connected. And so when we're in this conversation, it is always listening collectively from the we. But if you're sharing something, it's from the I. It's from my personal experience. That way it eliminates any judgment of another's experience, and it gives you the opportunity to feel safe to share whatever is on your mind and in your heart. And finally, what happens here, even though we're in this extended forum, this is a safe space to share right? We decided to make this particular God Talk specifically focused on this event because we know everyone has issues, concerns, and even fear. And so no question is off limits.
Mm-hmm.
Just feel free to share in this environment. There is no judgment. It is just love here. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So to get started, I know that we have, there's one email that came in from Wendy. And Wendy, I don't know if you want to just share your question, if you want to read it, or if you want to just kind of express where you are and where you're feeling now, and we can go from that place.
Wow, I love looking and seeing everybody's that's joined us. This is awesome.
Should I just read the email? Sorry, I wasn't prepared for you to call on me.
Okay.
We can read it for you.
We can read it for you if you like.
If you would prefer.
Better.
Okay, that sounds good.
Because I actually feel like a lot of people are going to have concerns around this particular topic.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's see. I have so many emotions going through me that it's hard to articulate what the problem is, or maybe it's just everything. I just lost my cruise ship job, or it's delayed indefinitely. My visual album demo is finally finished just last week, and I was on the brink of sending it out to agents and ships. Now I don't think it's the right time to send, and I don't know when I will play this solo show that I've worked nonstop for 2 years. I have limited money, and I was counting on my ship gig. Now I have to apply for unemployment for the first time in my life. I'm worried financially. I feel that people are racist around me. I am Asian, and I see my friends getting picked on and harassed. I see it in the news too. I feel angry and more angry. I am angry at Trump and his non-response to the virus and racist and ignorant comments. I find myself to the point of hating him with a vengeance. Wow, I didn't realize I feel so much anger, actually. I don't know how to process so much. There's news, there's media exaggeration, there are opinions on Facebook, there's misinformation. I try to shut it out, but I find myself alone in my apartment and needing connection. So I go on social media, but it leaves me feeling overwhelmed. This is why I didn't want to reach out to you, because it sounds like such a long and annoying complaint. I feel like with all the spiritual tools I have, I should be able to handle this, but I haven't been handling it very well. I feel really stressed out. I am not quite sure how to process so much all at once. Some days are better and some days are not so good, but I know I am not alone in this. So many other friends also lost their jobs and have the same emotions that I have. It's not unique, but the anti-Asian sentiment is really starting to get to me. I feel uncomfortable walking anywhere. I feel like someone is going to attack me because I may or may not be wearing a mask. All right, everybody, let's take a breath.
Everybody breathe in, because it feels like that's a lot.
Yeah, let's breathe in, because what I absolutely know is that almost everyone can relate to some or all of what you just shared. So thank you, Wendy, first for sharing your question and being really transparent, because it speaks to the varying levels of what's happening. And I think one of the things that's important to understand, to kind of start with, and PY, I think would be great for you to check to take us through this, of sort of what's happening in terms of what the presence of this global pandemic or the coronavirus, COVID-19, is actually revealing.
Well, and let's back up and talk about it from the fear perspective,
Mhm.
because that's really what is running rampant right now, is fear. And as I get on social media, I notice a lot of people posting their fears and posting their beliefs about what fear is. And I want to make sure that we clear up some things about what fear is and what it is not. I saw someone post that fear is guidance. It's an opportunity for me to listen to my fear and move forward from there. Fear is not guidance. Fear, if anything, is information so that we can tap into what we are thinking that is causing us to have an emotional response and a physiological response, right? So we don't use fear as guidance to move or to act. Many people are experiencing fear. Wendy's not the only one. We all have it. But here's the thing about fear. Fear is, from A Course in Miracles perspective, separation. It is the thing that isolates us from our brother. It's the thing that ultimately isolates us from this source that we speak of so freely, right, at CSC. And fear shows up in many different ways, but it is all fear, whether it is an emotional response that we normally associate with fear, or whether it is anything from anger to depression, anxiety. From the Course's perspective, it's all fear. there are either two systems that we're thinking with. One is the system of love and the Holy Spirit and God, or the thought belief system of fear. So we either have fear-based thinking or love-based thinking all the time, all day long. Okay, so let's get that straight. Mm-hmm. And so, for example, I'll use myself. My fear has showed up as anger at policies, anger at the things that are being brought to the surface in terms of how people are treated, what systems we don't have in place. But what I had to realize is that anytime I'm in an upset, it's more than what I think. Of Course in Miracles says I'm never upset for the reason I think. I'm upset because I'm seeing something that's not there. I'm upset, which is creating an emotional and a physiological response in my body that then takes over, and I act from that place, right? Think about your own fears. For example, we don't use our fear to take action, and many people are doing that. Right? They're letting the physiological response take over and say, for example, oh, I need to get all the toilet paper I can get. Yeah. Right? I need to just hoard and hoard and hoard. And what that's doing is it's taking them out of the grounded place that says there's more than enough. It's putting them into this physiological response, go get this so that I can be secure. But what it's not doing is diminishing the fear. It's actually reinforcing the fear. Right? Because when I get out there in the vibration of fear and everyone else is out there in the vibration of fear and we're out there together, we're just looking at each other consciously and unconsciously, realizing that, oh, wait, I don't have, you don't have. Let me make sure that I have, right? Anytime that we're in the fear response, we are not thinking clearly. Mm-hmm. And then we do things. Lash out at another because we feel separate from them. We have to guard ourselves, protect ourselves, hoard, mm-hmm. overeat, overdrink, mm-hmm. do all these responses instead of going to the root of our fear and looking at the thought pattern that is driving the fear response, right? Most people, when they're out there, they're not conscious. Right. They have a certain mindset, and that's it. Mm-hmm. Let's go back to Wendy's comments and see if there's anything else I wanted to make sure that we talked about. So when we're in our fear response, what do? First of all, we take a breath. We don't respond from the fear place. That's just feeding the fear. Mm-hmm. This idea of feeling the fear and doing it anyway is keeping the fear active. There's a fear-based thought system that is operating, and it's just as easy to choose another thought, right? The fear has got established. It is present, but we can take back control of our thought system, our thought pattern. We don't just go act on it, right? We don't even feed it anymore. We realize that right now I'm feeling fear. Okay, that's normal. But if I continue to respond from that place, it will only keep getting worse. I will keep finding things in the environment, in my circumstances that support my fear. So we have to take back our decision. What are we going to focus on? The thing that's causing us fear or the thing that will put our fear at ease? And that can only happen in our mind. It can't happen by going out there. Okay. The other thing about fear is it puts us in two places, the past or the future. The future, meaning there won't be enough for me and everyone else, or the past, this is what happened to me before when I felt this physiological response called fear. And here's the thing, it doesn't even have to be fear about the current situation. If it's based on past physiological response, then it's just triggering an old memory that's causing us to act in the present. Right. And that's why we got to breathe and become present so that we can begin to dissipate the fear. Anything else you want to add right now?
Yeah. One of the things, and I know this is happening for a lot of people, where you said, Wendy, I have all these spiritual tools and, you know, I feel like I should know how to handle this. Here's one of the things. We absolutely have to use our spiritual tools right here and right now, but it's a moment to moment thing. And particularly now, So you may begin your day with meditation. You may be doing your 5, 5, and 5, where you're meditating, you're reading something affirmative and writing affirmatively. And by late morning, Mike Pence and the coronavirus team has done another conference, and you realize how inept our federal government is. And now you're pissed. Okay. At the moment that you recognize I'm getting pissed, that's when you begin to use your tools.
Right.
Right.
Without judgment.
Without judgment, right? Because it's a moment to moment thing. So that's the moment when you want to stop, take a breath, right? Now we offer so many different tools. One of the ones I love, I always share it. Greg, where are you now? Where am I? Right? Because in the moment that I go off into being mad at Pence and mad at Trump and then mad at all of the anti-Asian sentiment, because it's gonna keep going. It'll just spiral and spiral and spiral. Now I'm in other people's business. Now I'm in the future. Now I'm in yesterday, right? Greg, where are you? I'm on the couch. Greg, where are you? I'm in Brooklyn. Greg, where are you? I'm in New York. And then you can put your hand on your heart. I am here now. That's literally why we sing that song every week, right? I breathe in, I breathe out. I'm in the present moment now, right? Taking that time. And even feeling your heartbeat, it's actually a beautiful thing to bring you present, because what that's also doing is supporting the coherence, because we want to live from the heart as we're living from love. That then the heart will inform the brain, right? And so then you bring yourself back. Then, okay, now you can consciously make a choice from that place. Let me turn off the news conference. Consciously make a choice from that place. Let me go back and read something that's beneficial to me, that brings me back to all is well. I love what Abraham Hicks says. Let me take a nap. Right? Let me stop.
We have plenty of time to nap, y'all.
We have plenty of time to nap, right? Like, let me stop this vibration, right? One of the other things, and this is just somewhat of a plug of where we're going to be going in the coming weeks, the financial realities and what's going on for musicians. Megan, I saw your post about, right, again, someone working in theater. There's so many hourly workers. Even I know as much as there's a lot of conversation right now about the Department of Education in New York closing schools. There are many hourly workers that work for the Department of Education that will not get paid if schools are closed. So we recognize that there's so much going on there. And if the virus had happened or not, there are a lot of indicators of an economic recession. It was coming in 2020. This has just exacerbated it. So we're going to be studying spiritual economics. We did a sermon series on it about 4 or 5 years ago, but we're going to study the book in detail, all 12 chapters, week by week. So no matter how long this thing lasts, whether we're doing it online or whether we're doing it in person, starting the first Sunday in April, we're going to be going through that, because we recognize that it is possible to thrive under any economic condition. The history is clear.
Right. And that's a belief you have to firmly establish within yourself. If we're looking to the external world to validate this truth that I can thrive under any condition, it will not show it to you.
Right.
You have to show it to yourself.
Right.
You have to ground yourself in this belief. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't notice what's happening.
Right.
Because it's an interesting thing, and I talk about this a lot. We walk this line, especially in New Thought, between the human experience and the divine understanding, right? There's something happening in this human realm, right? Right now, it's this coronavirus. But there's also this knowingness that I have, this truth that all is well. How do I navigate the two?
Yeah.
And that's partly what we're going to be looking at, especially related to economic conditions. One of the things that we don't do is judge the experience that we're having in the human condition.
Right.
We balance the two. In that moment, as PG was saying, where I'm feeling the anxiety, I'm definitely in my human instinct, right? Which goes back to a predetermined thing that is happening in my brain. I get that. I know that. But I also can use my tools and my same mind to bring myself to this level of truth. Now, does that mean I belittle another's experience, or I judge myself or another's experience? No. We're all believing that this thing is real.
Right.
right? Whether we on this higher level know that it isn't, we all believe that it is. And so we have to balance those two, right? Between, oh, I'm afraid, but I also know something to be true. And it, for a while, until you learn and continually practice, will feel like one has more weight than the other, the human experience. But as you notice it and use your tools, you'll begin to put it in its proper perspective. Okay?
Yeah.
Let's see what's up.
Absolutely. And you know, one of the things that I think is helpful for all of us, and it's something that's actually in your question, Wendy, but and again, it really speaks to all of us. I'm wondering if you can appreciate the mirror that's happening, right? As you are experiencing and can see. Unfortunately, there's been some ugly incidents here in New York and really around the globe. Of, you know, anti-Asian sentiment, xenophobia, etc., racism. And then in the same sentence, you talk about your hate and vengeance towards another human, right? Right. And it's beautiful to bring it up, not to say two wrongs don't make a right, but simply it's a recognition of, wait, just as I can easily go to a place of hate for someone, these people are easily going to a place of hate. What is that about, and where does it come from? And this is where for me, I think about what happens with a stressed out mind. Now, I know a lot of people, I've seen posts all over social media with good intentions telling folks, you know, don't be afraid, don't go into fear, because fear weakens your immune system. And so we want to have strong immune systems so that we can fight the virus if we get it, or so we can block the virus so we don't get it. And while that's true, it's only true to a point, because what actually weakens our immune system is not a week of fear. Right. I mean, you know, or 2 weeks of the fear and panic that we've been seeing. In truth, we live in a stressed out culture. Right. And so this is, I hear our good friend Bob Roth, he talks about it all the time, right? That we're actually living in an epidemic of stress. It's because when we look at the data, right, stress is the common denominator when we start to think about high blood pressure and heart disease. Ironically, many of the things that are the underlying conditions that if you have the coronavirus could actually make your experience a little worse. So if we live in a stressed out culture, what that means is most people on this planet are living in the fight or flight response.
All the time.
All the time. If there never was a virus, this is why you could step on somebody's shoe and they will kill you. That's a stressed out mind, right? That's someone that's living in fight or flight. And so what the presence of this virus has done is revealed that, brought it up front and center so we can see it. And so one of the things, again, going back to Bob Roth, one of the things about when our minds are stressed out, we know this because we have so much information and knowledge about how the brain works now, right? We're living from the amygdala. That's the back part of our brain. We're not accessing the prefrontal cortex, which is the CEO of the mind. And I love that example because if you think about a company, imagine an organization and no one had access to the CEO. The CEO was gone. Think about all of the foolishness and chaos and knee-jerk reactions that would happen within that company because there was no one directing the overall vision of the company. There was no one there to make those decisions. There was no one to lead, guide, direct, etc. That's the CEO. Well, the CEO of our mind is that place that allows us to stop, take a breath, see the whole picture, right? All of those things. And so most humans, unfortunately, right now aren't in that place.
Right.
This is why our spiritual tools are important, because the data also shows us that meditation strengthens the connection between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. Not that we won't experience the fight or flight response, but we have a CEO that says, hey, there's another way of seeing this. We have, to use another example, we have a mom or dad within us that says, yes, I know you think there's a boogeyman in the closet, right? But actually there isn't a boogeyman, right? It's that voice of reason. It's that adult that you trust that can turn on the light and open it up and see it's just your clothes, it's your toys, right? And so that's why we do our spiritual practice, so that then we're able to access that thing that is within us that allows us to do that. And so where our love and compassion comes in is that we recognize that, oh, wow, this is a stressed out mind, right? That's all it is, right? Because if we knew better, we would do better. And so what do I need to do to make sure that I'm accessing the CEO within my mind, right? What are the things that I need to do to make sure that I am stopping, taking a breath, so I can make a choice, so I can see the whole landscape and then move from that place. Because one of the things that's interesting, going back to the financial piece, is that new opportunities what this means is that the opportunities that you thought were the resources source, the infinite source, is going to use new resources. That's all it means.
Well, and here's the idea. A lot of our fear is based on the meaning that we give everything. Right? In your email, you said, I'll have to apply for unemployment for the first time in my life. There's a whole lot of meaning, Wendy, about what that is, the fact that you would have to do it. And all of that takes you into that stressed out place. It's not loving. If the resource is available to you, then you make use of the resource, right? Because in truth, it's all coming from source.
Right.
So to have any judgment about yourself or anyone else that would have to make use of those resources would be not beneficial to you, right? It would make it even harder for you to access resources that are available. We talk about this idea that God is omnipresent everywhere, all the time, and in all instances. Then wouldn't this source be flowing in a multitude of ways? And if you have decided in your own mind, not just you, but all of us, right? We have our ideas about how life is supposed to unfold, where our income is supposed to come from. But if source is everywhere present, then couldn't source be in those resources as well? And so what we have to do is really look at the reasons, the meaning that we've given that is causing us pain. And whatever that meaning for you is, you have to look at that. What does it mean about me? Does it mean I'm a failure? What does it mean in my own mind? Because in the mind of source, you are perfect, whole, and complete. And any resource that is available to you. Right? Because then it puts you in resistance, and then you won't seek out those resources that are available because you have a meaning associated with accessing them. Right?
Powerful. Powerful. So just a reminder, everybody, please, if you have questions, email them, particularly if you're on YouTube, but Zoom or YouTube, email your questions to godtalk@celebrationsc.org. We're monitoring those. Wendy, do you have a follow-up question or comment as we have shared a lot?
Yes.
This is good.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I guess, everything makes perfect sense, but it's just a matter of implementing and just, I don't know, absorbing it and implementing. I guess the only question I have is I'm having trouble, I think the news media is meant to addict us. And this is why that balance between the sensationalism and the need for us to find out information that is helpful. And then, like I said, there's, of course, all your friends' opinions and their pieces and their articles. And I'm having trouble. And then, of course, there's one more thing, is the need to connect at this point when I'm in my apartment with my cat. I want to connect. I want to know how everybody is doing. A lot of my friends likely lost their jobs. So I'm finding it very difficult to balance all those things. So I don't know if you have tips for that. Besides breathing.
So let's break it down a little bit, Wendy, because what you're doing is something I call layering. And when we layer things on top, we can't get to the root of what the thought patterns are that we can change. You're layering your beliefs about media. And what its purpose is. Media's purpose is just provide information. You determine what information gets in, what information you use, right? So media is serving its purpose, so it's not doing anything wrong.
Right.
So let's clear that up. Are there sources of media that have taken this and used it for other reasons? Yes. But the purpose of it is to provide information, right? When we begin to judge it, then we get into this tug of war with it and ourselves for continuing to access it,
Right.
right? And then we're spinning, right? So that's the first thing. The other piece about what's happening in your friends' lives.
Mhm.
Do you know that this will result in them not having XYZ ultimately happen? You don't,
Right.
right? So you're projecting into the future, not only about your life, but about the lives of your friends.
Mhm.
Nothing wrong with the need to connect. Everything happens in relationship, of course.
Mhm.
But you're going to have to get yourself on a schedule about how much information. First of all, clear up your meaning about what media is,
Mhm.
right? There are going to be a lot of people posting right now.
Mhm.
And a lot of that information, I just read an article recently from a research scientist talking about fear and how it creates people, it moves them into this place of being an expert when none of them are,
Mhm.
right? Because we're looking for answers and we begin to base it on our own experience, and then we put out and then we post and then we have our own whatever going on, right? And so in truth, most of the people that are posting are not experts.
Mhm.
And so that would help you filter, right? People are actually posting from their fear or their past experience,
Mhm.
right? So there you go. That gives you a little filter. Okay, when I get on social media, I know some things are happening. There
Right.
is accurate information, there is misinformation,
Mhm.
and there are people that are posting based on their level of expertise, which in most cases, they're not working for the CDC,
Right.
right? And so that begins to help you filter what's happening, what you're consuming. And then you can step back and look at it. But here's the thing. Before you get on social media, have, first of all, a time frame.
Mhm.
How long am I going to be on social media?
Mhm.
10 minutes and then I'm off.
Mhm.
Set a timer if you have to. The
Mhm.
other thing, what is your intent?
Right.
And what is it that you want to get out of that?
Mhm.
So if your intent is connection, then you look for those things that will connect you, not make you separate, right? And you don't connect around pain
Right. Or complaints.
or complaints. You connect around joy. So if your feed right now is full of complaints, then you go seek out some sources that will bring you back to gratitude and to joy and start to click on those.
Right.
So that when you come back on the source, analytics are great. They can be used to support you as opposed to put you in fear,
Mhm. Absolutely.
right?
Right. And I think, one of the things in terms of connection, and this is really good for all of us, social media is not actually really the best place for connection, right? So to the extent that you want to connect, reach out to friends, right? Set up a Skype hangout or a Zoom hangout, or, do group FaceTime or WhatsApp, whatever, there's a zillion apps, whatever feels good to you. But hang out that way, right? With one-on-one conversations.
Right.
And, to the extent that you're aware, if you have folks in your life that you have been connecting with right now around the pain, around the complaints, around the disappointment, you don't want to connect with those folks right now. Find the people, and this is why community is important. This is why we have a spiritual community. Connect around the good, connect around the joy, because there is still so much good happening, right? In the way that folks are helping one another. There's so much good that's happening in the way that, speaking of unemployment insurance, the Senate will pass a bill tomorrow that's going to ensure that folks are getting the money that's needed. New York State has already waived the 7-day waiting period. Thank God. And so, if you got to get unemployment, you don't have to wait an additional 7 days while you're already trying to make so many things happen. There's beautiful things that are happening in terms of, utilities not being cut off. Focus on the good, look for the good. And as I shared in a post yesterday on Facebook, quoting Mr. Rogers, right? Look for the helpers. All of that is putting you in this space and place of amplifying that vibration of good and joy, recognizing that it is only out of that space and only out of that vibration that you're actually going to be able to then thrive through this time, right? And move through this time successfully.
So the most important thing is maintaining your peace, right?
Mhm.
And so if we're obsessing over the facts that are on the ground,
Mhm.
right, that are keeping us in conflict, the conspiracy theories, the reports, all those things, we're letting the external realities dictate our internal reality,
Mhm.
right? And, you know, it reminds me of this. I'm sure everybody's heard that story about the two monks that were walking and they came across this beautiful woman, and the older monk picked the woman up and carried her across the river, set her down, and they kept going, right?
Mhm.
And then later on, way down the road, the younger monk said, you know, that's against our rules. How could you have picked her up and carried her? And the older monk was like, well, I picked her up way back then and put her down, but you're still carrying her.
Mhm.
We've got to realize what things are currently operating in our thought system.
Mhm.
Are you carrying the old reality? Are you carrying these facts moment by moment, or can you put them down?
Right.
And when you put them down, notice the relief that your body begins to feel,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? Most of us aren't doing that. We're in an unconscious place of a stressed out mind.
Yeah.
The beautiful thing about the way the mind has evolved throughout time, yes, that amygdala is still there, but the forefront of our mind has evolved so that we can have some emotional intelligence, so
Mhm.
that we can determine for ourselves what feels right and not let our body take over from a physiological space, because it will continue to do what it's done. But we have evolved throughout time
Mhm.
to not be in flight or fight so much of the time. And in fact, like I like to say, where's the tiger? The moment you look around and there is nothing physically that is distressing you, then you know that you've gone to a place in the mind that is no longer the power center,
Yep.
right? It's good if you got to get out of the way of a moving truck or cross the street. But in your daily interactions with people and your thoughts about self, it is not useful and it's antiquated.
Mhm. Mhm. This is good. Another tip that comes to mind, and this is, I think, a good one. And for those of you who have studied You Are the Placebo with me, you might remember this. Laughter boosts the immune system, right? People talking about vitamin C and D and
That's
echinacea and all these other roots, and that's wonderful and good. I take my supplements.
Yep.
But laughter literally heals. There are so many people that have gone through cancer treatments, and what they did in the midst of their chemo is make sure that they were only watching things that just made them laugh, only living in that place. And it's actually, it can be documented. You actually see a shift in the cells based on a person who just lived in that vibration of comedies. So, you know, go on Netflix. There are lots of great comedians. Watch some stand-up comedy. Watch movies like Coming to America, right? Whatever your favorite movies are that just put you in that place no matter what. This is important. And I think, and this is also important in thinking about how we use our time now. As so many people are working from home, as so many people will be learning how to create a structured schedule with your kids or just with yourself. Make sure that you insert something like that, that you're watching a comedy, you know, every day or,
Right.
you know, multiple times a week, because that's actually doing something that's amazing. I know you can do watch parties on Facebook. Do a watch party around a, you know, something that's funny. There's a way to connect.
Right. There's a way to positively connect.
Yeah.
And speaking of Netflix, don't get on Netflix and watch Contagion.
Yeah, oh yeah, right. Or yeah, there's some other pandemic
There's a
on
whole
there too.
bunch of these movies. But see, the thing about it is it's in our psyche,
Mhm.
right? And that's why now it's like, oh, it's happening. It's really happening. We've fed ourselves these stressed out movies and this stressed out way of being for so long
Mhm.
that now we just automatically assume that we have to live in the stress response, and we don't.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. And that's, you know, PY and I, of course, you know, we've been talking with each other so much about this, and this is one of the places again of compassion, because again, this didn't start with, you know, even when the virus started in China in November, right? When we became aware of it, we don't know that it officially started there. But we recognize that what started was the consciousness around disaster movies, the consciousness around, you know, the soon coming zombie apocalypse, the consciousness that some dis-ease would happen within human beings that would then cause some type of global pandemic. And this really speaks to the power of the mind and the power of our collective consciousness. So when, you know, when we say things like, you know, do a media detox or be mindful of the things that we watch, it's for these reasons, because then when something really happens like a virus, is our response
in alignment with what's the facts are,
with what the facts are?
or are we
Exactly.
going to our role in the movie?
Right.
Right. Or we just cast ourselves as the new lead in
Mhm.
this next version of Contagion.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So we have a couple more emails. Again, godtalk@celebrationsc.org. This question, I think, is a good one because it kind of can speak to a bunch of different things. From Charles. I was in a friends and family gathering last night and the conversation shifted to God. We talked about a topic I couldn't answer. The question is, who or what was the God of the Old Testament? When you read the scriptures, it is hard to believe it is the same God of the New Testament that Jesus talked to us about. Surely not the God of love. For example, how could God command his people to go to war, to destroy another people, or sacrifice your baby to prove your love for God? Good question, and very good question in the context of where we are now. Now, the first thing I would offer, if you go to our YouTube channel, because there's so much nuance here that's important when we think about the Old Testament and the New Testament, to our Reimagine the Bible series. We have several of them now. The very first one we did, Reimagine the Bible Part 1, is all about the Old Testament. And then in the same year, we did Reimagine the Bible Part 2, which is about the New Testament. And so if you don't watch anything else, the sermon, What's in Your Bible, is very important because it really speaks to how we can really understand scripture. So the God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament, they're the same and they're not the same. And the reason that they're not the same or appear not to be the same is because scripture or the Bible is man's interpretation of God. So what we're getting in these stories is someone's interpretation of who they believe God is or was. And when we think about that story of having to sacrifice your son and go on the mountain to prove your faith, right? Well, if you look across human history at that time, there was a collective belief that there was a God that we had to please through some sort of sacrifice. We can look at many indigenous communities, and we have the stories of you would take a virgin and put her up on the mountain by the volcano and sacrifice her. Same consciousness, right? Because they believed that then that would bring some, prosperity to the land, or that would bring rain, or, all these sorts of things. So there was a consciousness on the earth, human, that has nothing to do with Judaism or any other specific religion. It reflects a level of understanding in that time. What's beautiful about when we move into the Second Testament or the New Testament, what the teachings of Jesus really reflect the new age, right? It's the Piscean age. It's the age of I believe, which was moving us into another expression and understanding of our God concept. So I think where this question is really beneficial in the context of where we are now is, and I think there's a sermon, Check Your God Concept, on YouTube. What we need to be clear about is what is our concept of God. I've said it many times, but it's important, right? The sum total of what you believe to be true is who and what God is in your life. This is why everybody has a different God. This is why everybody has a different story or different understanding. This is why they're all different religions, and within each religion, infinite expressions within it, and some agree and some don't agree, because in truth, the sum total of what you believe to be true, right, what you hold to, is God, is your God. And so it's very important in the context of where we are now, right? We're seeing that fear is actually many people's God. Right? We're seeing that panic is many people's God, right? We're seeing that distrust is many people's God. Separation and otherness is many people's God, because in truth, that's what they've been living from and expressing in through an as. But what we also know to be true is that God, which is love and truth, that is the God that many people are expressing and that we're experiencing on the planet. And so what's so incredibly important, I keep bringing my mind back to it when I want to get upset or I find myself starting to fuss in my head or to Pastor Yolanda about what's going on. I'm saying, wait, what is love? And I love the passage in scripture that's so clear. Love is patient. Love is kind, right? So I could just stop right there. Am I being patient? Am I being kind, right? And am I allowing the God in me to express in that way? But I also love it says it does not boast. And this is important because part of what's happening. I've seen it in New Thought. I've seen it in evangelical Christian circles. I've seen it in Muslim and Buddhist circles and spiritual, metaphysical, all kinds of persuasions. This sort of spiritual superiority that's starting to show up. Like, oh, I know that all sickness is an illusion and all this kind of stuff. And this is the reason why some people are still having service because they want to prove their faith.
Right.
But love doesn't boast.
Right. And there is nothing to prove.
Exactly.
The beauty of faith is that it's certain. There's no external need to validate or prove anything.
Right.
Right. Faith and certainty are synonymous.
Right.
And so if I believe in the God of love, then I am certain that the outcome will be love.
Right.
We might be in the in-between. We might be in a stage or a phase that we're moving to it. The other beautiful thing about God being love is that means that there's enough love to heal all this unconsciousness that is existing on the planet right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All of these things that we now know we need to fix. Okay, now we get to see what happens when all these things are operating and they're not operating from love.
Right.
There's just enough love to heal this.
Right.
And we got to keep that in mind. Enough truth to heal it, enough love to heal it, enough of us individually in our own lives and in the lives collectively to heal it. But that requires us to be in our miraculous mind or in our right mind, A Course in Miracles would say. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so again, I encourage you to go to that message series specifically, because one of the things that I outlined, which is a foundational piece, is that the Old Testament in particular, and really the New Testament as well, but the Old Testament was written by 4 different schools or schools of thought. Right. And so that's why even the Old Testament doesn't completely harmonize, right? Where it feels like God is approving one person here, and then you turn the page and God is mad at the person, and it doesn't make sense, particularly when you're looking at the different kings. And so that's because there were actually 4 different schools of thought. And these schools had multiple writers, right? That were interpreting and reinterpreting based on who the king was at the time. We'll get the sermon up because I don't think we have the edited version, but last year in the sermon Loving Jezebel, I talked a lot about that you see how it's sort of like the Game of Thrones, and how each king had writers that were writing the story to justify their reign. Right. And to justify why they were in power. And so, of course, then God honored them from that perspective.
And to hold on to power.
Exactly. Hold on to power. Right. And then to vilify their predecessor or vilify their enemy. So all of that was happening. And so, again, this is why I say that really, the God of the Bible in general, but the Old Testament and the New Testament, it was a school of writers' interpretation of who and God, what God is. And in truth, they were giving us their God concept. But as the old saints used to say in the church that I grew up with, you got to know God for yourself. And that's what the God concept piece is about, that we must establish our own God concept. Right. Very, very, very important.
And that requires us to really examine what our God lexicon, what we call God, how we think about God. And then eliminate those concepts that do not support us in this loving interpretation of God.
Yep.
And we all have them. I mean, I don't care how long you've been in New Thought, right? Oh no, I believe that God is love. But yet and still, you out there hoarding toilet paper too, right? So we got to really be honest about where our God concept is, what it is, the words, the phrases, the ideas, the beliefs that we have about God, and begin to eliminate those that do not support us in this way of being on the planet.
Absolutely.
There are plenty of people out there that will continue to believe the old way. We cannot do anything about them. All we can do is be the light that points them in the direction that there is a God, and it is not how you're currently believing. A God that is a fearful God is not the God of love.
Right. Absolutely. Oh, awesome, Charlie. All right. Thank you. Wonderful answer. Beautiful,
awesome.
Beautiful. So we have another question, and this question is about judgment.
Dun, dun, dun.
Which is beautiful, and it takes us back to some of what we've already been talking about. Narissa writes, what strategies can you share for noticing and releasing judgment? I feel as though it is coming up a lot lately as I move through this experience as a person who is medically vulnerable, and I would love and appreciate any advice you have. Thank you. Right. First, thank you, Narissa. One of the things I just want to acknowledge, and this is beautiful, and I hadn't even thought about it at the time, although we were aware. One of the reasons that we thought it was so important to not hold service is because we think this is an incredibly loving act. So many folks are in our community that are moving through different experiences, some that we know about, some that we don't, and recognizing that there may be folks who are not sick, who don't even fit that profile of the elderly, right? Like it's easy to say, oh, if you're elderly, stay home, but we recognize that what is the most loving thing I can do? I can keep my behind at home and not hold service and not even create the opportunity for someone that I love to potentially, contract this virus and it be, problematic for them. So, this is absolute, as we're talking about, who and what God is and this God of love, this is an incredibly loving act. Staying home, working from home is a loving act. It's not a fearful act. We're not staying home because we're scared of coronavirus. We're staying home because, oh my God, I get to love my sister and my brother in this way, right? And so that's how we get to frame this. So we love you, we honor you, Narissa.
And the other thing about a loving, compassionate act for self, right? Of Course in Miracles talks about this idea that we either exalt the body or we vilify the body. And many times when we have a condition or an illness or something that would make us feel inferior to others on the planet, then we begin to have this internal unconscious dialogue about ourselves. If I were better in my body, XYZ, if this hadn't happened, XYZ, and that's not love, right? Nope. And so while we want love and compassion for others, we have to give it to ourselves. And that means listening internally about what we need to lovingly support ourselves right where we are.
Yeah.
Right? Many of us have had health conditions, including myself, that we would like to be gone. And we're honest about it. We don't want, I'm going to say some bad words. We don't want.
Be good.
We don't want whatever is happening in our body to be currently happening. If we focus in on what we do not want, we will get more of that. And most of that is judgment about my body being inferior to others. If the God of love created you perfect, whole, and complete, that's how you remain. And right now in your physical body, you're having an experience that is unwanted. When we focus on the unwanted experience, it makes it even worse for us, right? And so we bring love to ourselves, and we even ask ourselves, what would love do right now for me? Not what is love requiring of somebody else to do for me, but what is the most loving thing I can do for myself right now, right where I am? And the first thing is to give up judgment about being in the body the way that it is right now. Right? Narissa? There she is.
Yeah, she's there. Right. So that's an interesting piece. And it goes back to this mirror, right? That actually the first step in releasing judgment is, am I judging the experience that I'm having in my body first and foremost, right? Like, I don't even want to have this. I wish I didn't even have to say I'm medically vulnerable or any of these things, right? Right. So that's where it starts, right? And so as we release judgment of self, then we can use tools. I think I mentioned this either last Sunday or the Sunday before, Byron Katie, where we put a question mark at the end of these statements, like, they should know better. They should know better, right? Which brings awareness to the judgment, but then also now we're questioning our thoughts, right? And then, of course, if you would like, then using the 4 questions of the work to take that better, right? Take that deeper, rather, to ask, that first question, is this true? Yes or no? Can I absolutely know that it's true? Yes or no, right? And that absolutely, in all space and time, under all circumstances, generally the answer is going to be no, right? And then the beautiful, when we get into that third question, right? Well, how do I feel, right? How do I react? How do I respond? What happens in my own body and in my own mind when I believe this thought, when I hold this to be true, right? What addictive habits do I start to create? PY spoke to that earlier, right? We start to overeat, overdrink, all of these things as we're living in fear and stress, right?
We start to eat up all our coronavirus snacks.
Right.
Right.
It's only been a couple days.
It's only been 2 days and I'm out of snacks. Right.
Right. And so we check in on that, right? What are the things that we're doing? And then, you know, my favorite question, who would I be without this thought? The imagination question, where we get to entertain, real as we've brought ourselves present to the point that we're questioning the thought, we're conscious, we're in the present. And who would I be? Right. And then we can start to realize and recognize that there's an experience of freedom we're not currently experiencing. And it's possible. It's possible. Why? Because we can imagine it and see it in our own mind.
Mm-hmm. Because we're imagining anything. We're imagining the worst case scenarios for the planet, for our individual lives.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I love Louise Hay. The first thing we can do is stop scaring ourselves by the thoughts that we think and keep thinking and keep believing. Right. So as you're creating your schedule for the day, because we are in agreement that there needs to be a schedule for all this time that we have. Many of us are working from home. The reason we said spiritual practice is not an option is because it's something we do first thing every day.
Mm-hmm.
We're still, getting up, doing our normal, but we make sure that we continue to do our spiritual practice, whether it's 5, 5, and 5, and whether it's more advanced, whatever it is, because that brings you back. It sets up your day so that you are no longer continually on Facebook, filtering your life through the fear lens, right? So whatever your schedule is going to be, we recommend that you have a schedule for your day for as long as we are, whether it's 2 weeks or 2 months.
Right.
And you stick to it. In creating this schedule, the one thing that I'd like for us all to ask ourselves is, who do I want to be when this is over? When this most recent epidemic or whatever we're going through right now, even if it was a snow, a blizzard, right? Who do I want to be when this is over? And so I create my life at this point in time based on knowing for something certain, this will end. Based on something else certain, that all will be well and is well. So who am I going to be when this is over? And that's the attributes. It's not just the things that I want to do when this is over, meaning like go to a club, right? That's part of it. But who do I want to be in my life? And what kind of light do I want to be on the planet when this is over? Because guess what, y'all? There's going to be a need for a lot of light. Right? As we move through this process and on the other side of what's currently happening. So create your day around who you want to be on the planet when this is over. And if that means I want to be a person that is loving and kind and at peace, then that means I got to build time in my schedule to practice peace. Right? If I want to be a world-renowned author that is sharing these messages of love, then I put time in my schedule to write. Right? And so because many of you journal, right? So using this guided journaling technique, the question is, who do I want to be? Not what am I afraid of? Not what am I running from? But using this guided technique in your journaling, right? It's affirmative, it's guided, right? Who do I want to be? And that's when you get to activate what PG was talking about. If I don't have this belief and I don't have this fear, then I got to be something or someone. Who do I want to be? And then you let the imagination go in that direction. Who do I want to be when this is over? Because it will be over. We're now putting things in place now that we had been thinking about for CSC. We work on that. Our individual lives, we work on that. And we set time in our day that we dedicate to this vibration. Right? We know that we ain't stupid. We know you're going to get on Facebook, right? But limit your time. I'm serious. Set a timer. So that when you get on there and stick to it. But really craft out your day so that at the end of the day, it hasn't been consumed by fear.
Right. And you feel exhausted.
Right?
So we have 2 more questions. These will be the last 2 questions we take, but Fatima, I saw your question. Yes, the replay will be available. We're streaming this live to YouTube as well. So it'll be there as soon as we're done. It'll be there to watch as many times as you need to, or to catch the beginning if you missed it on YouTube. Yep. We just went from our West Coast fam. Now we're going to our Chicago family. Naz.
Hey, Naz.
She said, you just answered my question. I was going to ask, what's your response to people who are saying the coronavirus is the enemy coming to attack us and create separation? We're living in the last days, et cetera, et cetera. Awesome. Yeah. That consciousness is out there, and it's interesting because it's self-righteous. And you would think that even so-called spiritual folks would be immune from self-righteousness, but we recognize that all of us have a practice that we must continue to practice. And so that idea that love doesn't boast, I always find it interesting, and I watch, particularly when we think about spiritual teachers, the ones that aren't saying a lot, right? And speak when it's time to speak. There's so much wisdom in that. Love doesn't boast. And beautifully enough, even, imagine, right, if someone had a fire was started in their home, and maybe it's because they made a mistake. They didn't realize that, you shouldn't have grease near something. I don't know. And they started this fire. Now you could go on and say, you dummy, don't you know that you shouldn't do that, that's not safe? Like, is that really important? And does that matter? Or do they need some assistance? Can you call the fire department? Can you grab a fire extinguisher if that's appropriate, right? There's assistance that's needed, and a loving response that's needed. Love doesn't boast, it holds no record of wrongs, right? And then finally, love never fails, or love never ends, or my favorite, love never exhausts itself. Love never exhausts itself. So this is where we get into that idea why when Jesus was asked about how many times should we forgive our brother, right? It's never ending, right? Because love is inexhaustible. It holds all things, right? And transmutes and transforms them back into what it really is. Absolute good, perfect, whole, and complete. So yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun to just see how fear manifests in so many different ways, right? And it manifests.
It really does. And it's interesting, when I was doing the message on making the sacrifice of fear, unconsciously, for the most part, most of us have developed a relationship with our fear that if we give it up, we feel like we're losing something of value. Mm-hmm. And what we're saying is that we're replacing our fear with what is true, what does have real value, which is the joy, the peace, the ease, being the light, all those things. And so if we're motivated by our fear, it's because we have an old idea about ourselves that requires it to be in place, that we've given it some value, right? We see value for the fear in the media. We see value of fear in religion, right? Which keeps people in bondage to a God that is outside of themselves. There's been all kinds of value placed on fear, but we're willing to sacrifice that now.
Yes.
We're willing to give that up in place of the truth of our being. Does it mean we don't have fear? No, of course we do.
Right.
As I said, mine was manifesting as anger.
Right.
Right. But we just begin to let go of the value that we've placed on it in the past. And when we relinquish that value, something else comes in its place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Next question. This is from Emily Waters. I feel like this is related to the fear question, but if you have something else to add for this question, do you have advice on the intersections of surviving trauma, PTSD, and being in these current times? I finally found affordable therapy that will be postponed until further notice. How do the teachings of CSC speak to the resulting anxiety, overwhelm of surviving trauma and feeling overstimulated and affected by the heightened collective fear that seems to be happening? Really good question. You want to start?
Well, I'm glad that you found someone to support you in moving through the trauma. And I think this conversation overall will help with that, because the more we become aware of where the trauma is stored, first of all, it's aware that we even have the trauma. Second of all, it's aware of how it's stored in our body and how we respond from the trauma, and beginning to replace that when we become aware of what's going on in the body with something else, right? Because a lot of our trauma was created and stored in our body, in our cells, in our DNA. If you think about ancestral, that was never addressed. And so it's beautiful that you found something affordable
Mhm.
There's another underlying belief that we need to look at, the finally.
Mhm.
That indicates that this was my only shot at it, that I won't heal because I don't have access to this particular source.
Mhm.
And so we try to eliminate words like that because
Mhm.
then it puts us even in more fear that
Mhm.
I won't find another outlet, that there won't be anyone to help me, right?
Mhm.
The fact that you found a source, a resource, a therapeutic resource,
Mhm.
there will be others, and this one will also be available to you.
Right.
Right? We can't let the mind go to the place that now that I finally, quote unquote, gotten to a place where I want to heal, that I cannot heal.
Mhm.
We keep our mind on the possibility and the probability and the truth that healing is now ready to come forward in your life,
Mhm.
whether it's today or next week, right? So that's the first thing. Anything
Mhm.
else we want?
Yeah, there's a couple things that come to mind. There's a wonderful text. It's called "The Body Keeps the Score," and there's a couple highlights from there that I think is wonderful and interesting. One of the things that comes out of that book is one understanding the power of a multi-pronged approach. So as therapy is definitely part of the approach and necessary, one, we're in a moment now where everyone is starting to shift and become more nimble. So therapists who have never done online sessions before are starting to ramp up to be able to do that. So while this particular resource that you have right now is paused indefinitely, that just means, as I spoke to Wendy about how her one resource is changing, that means that new resources are coming online. So stay open to that possibility that, oh, I'm going to get to do therapy in a different way now. Again, recognizing that therapists are going through that. They're like, oh, I get to offer my services in a new way. Many therapists are not online, and now this is actually creating a new opportunity, a new channel for them, which in many cases may be at a more reduced rate, et cetera, et cetera. So we keep the multi-pronged approach. One of the other pieces is yoga, right? Which in the Body Keeps the Score speaks of as an absolutely therapeutic technique. Yoga is not for exercise, right? But what it actually supports us in doing is releasing deep-seated traumas that live within the body. We address the physical in that way. Right. And then the other prong, you're right here, right now with us. Right. So there's the spiritual lens where, we offer support, where CSC offers support and teachings. And so then you're recognizing that, oh, wait, I'm always supported and I have support, and moving your mind to the realization that, oh, it's going to look a little different. What's beautiful, there's so much, free yoga practices and, apps that you can download now. So, you may or may not have to pay or be a nominal fee. But I would say start with what you have, which is a consciousness prosperity principle, right? You ask yourself, wait, what do I have? And you look at that and make use of it, and then that expands. That's the underlying principle of the Jesus, when we read about the miracle of the fish and the 5 loaves. Jesus never dismissed what he had. He never criticized what he had. There was a reality of thousands of men plus women and children. I think it's 5,000 according to one of the stories, plus women and children. That was that reality. And he didn't look at what he had and said, this ain't nothing. What y'all want me to do with this? No, he took what he had and blessed it, right? According to the story, he lifted it up and blessed it, recognizing that, oh, this is useful, right? I can do something with this.
Right. And so that's why we eliminate words like finally, because then it also creates a vibration about, oh, I should have done it before now. I should have sought help before now. And we want to eliminate any judgment of that in our minds, because it closes the door to, as PG was saying, what do I have and what is possible, right? And as a therapist, many people are reaching out now to do online sessions.
So I don't know if there's a follow-up, Emily. I don't know if you're here on Zoom or not. But again, the things is really to think about a multiple multi-pronged approach, right? And so
that is available right here and right now.
right.
And then when we begin to look for that, it has to show up.
Mm-hmm. You can keep talking.
It has to show up in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right.
And Emily, if there's a follow-up, just let us know.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So what I want to do is just kind of give you guys a perspective and a heads up on where we're going in the next few weeks. So starting next week, we will pick back up with our sermon series based on working with the law. So we'll look at the last two laws, the law of obedience, and then in the next week, the law of success. And so we'll finish up the month with those sermons, right? And so then we're going to move into the beginning of the first Sunday in April, which I believe is April 5th.
I think so. Yeah.
The first Sunday in April, and we will start with spiritual economics. This is going to be a 12-week study, and we're going to do it as a study, as a teaching, rather than we're not going to be preaching a sermon, because again, we recognize we originally thought that we were going to do this as a class in 2020, realizing what was coming. But this is actually, it's just time for as many people to join in and jump in. And so we're going to use this forum. It'll be via Zoom, and it'll be shared each Sunday live on YouTube as well. So if you're not already on our mailing list, go to our website, click the option that says connect, and join the mailing list. That way you'll easily be able to get all the emails where we'll share out the link, the Zoom link for the class. Yeah, the book is Spiritual Economics by Eric Butterworth. You'll also see on our YouTube channel, we did a 4-week sermon series on it, but we're going to be studying, again, spiritual economics. This teaching and this consciousness that we're going to be creating, we want to be as supportive as possible in supporting each and every one of you in having and holding the consciousness that is necessary, no matter which way the stock market goes, no matter which way our 401ks go, no matter what's happening, and to stay nimble, developing additional resources, additional income streams, et cetera, and being really open to these new ideas, because what's always present when something like this happens, it's revealing something new. Right? It's exposing the things that need to be healed, and love can heal that. And beautifully, as different things are starting to come online, even as we look at what Congress is passing, which reflects some of the larger things that we want to become permanent laws in our country, it's revealing and now showing us the power of universal health care. Many people who didn't understand why universal health care is necessary have a different perspective just because of what's happening with the virus now. So it's revealing all of these wonderful things. And so we are actually have the possibility to create a new world collectively, but more importantly, to create a new world individually. And so that's what we're going to be supporting you in doing. If you have not already, I'm sure many of you are already familiar with online giving. You can use the link to give online, because we will be won't be in person for several weeks. So online giving is the only way that you can donate to CSC right now. But just go to our website, celebrationsc.org. Scroll down to the giving, to the give section or the giving section, and give what feels good. As we always say, find your joy number. Whatever that is, that's the number. Additionally, I'll put it in. I forgot about the text to give. Text to give is 347-744-9500 or 9500. It's really fast, easy, safe, and secure. It seems to be most people's favorite way to give. It's the way that I give each week. And again, give what feels good. And so we recognize and we know that when we give, and I encourage you all to, yes, it's by Eric Butterworth. I encourage you all to just affirm this with us right now as we're giving. And I know that many of you are going right now to the website and giving, or you're pulling out your phone and you're giving. All the money that I use.
All the money that I use.
Returns to me multiplied.
Returns to me multiplied.
In a never-ending cycle.
In a never-ending cycle.
Of increase.
Of increase.
And enjoyment.
And enjoyment.
Enjoyment. So please go there, use whichever option feels good to you. Give what feels good, no matter what it is. Even as if you are experiencing a decrease in your income, right? Please don't try to shame yourself into giving what you used to give or what you thought you could give, but give something, right? Even if your income is being reduced, if it's $1, if it's $5, because and why is that that is important? It's not about us. It's not about CSC. This is really absolutely a principle for you, because it's still putting you into that vibration that we just talked about. Wait, what do I have? I still have something. What I used to do when I was living in a place of, I had a good salary, but I still didn't feel, things were shrinking and it just didn't feel good. And I realized it was because I wasn't giving. And so what I started to do was I would keep a certain amount of money on me at all times, so that when anybody asked me for money, someone that didn't have a home or whatever their experience was, I wouldn't question them. I wouldn't judge them. I would just give it because I already had it. That began to open my life up in so many different ways, because I recognized the only reason my life was shrinking, nothing on paper suggested that I should be having a tough financial time. Again, good job, good salary, et cetera, right? But still I was experiencing this constriction. And thankfully, the truth of the teachings came back to me around giving. Greg, you're not giving, right? And immediately I shifted myself. So the amount is not important, but what is important, that you continue to give, because an open hand can receive, right? If we're doing it, oh, I don't have enough, I don't have enough, I don't have enough, I don't have enough. This hand is also closed, right? When you ask yourself, what do I have, and give from that place, right? Then your hand is open, and now you can also receive.
And that also applies to of yourself and your services, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do I have? Most people right now are looking at how their lives are changing and what they don't have and what they cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
And we're saying, well, how can I be, and what do I have to give? Not just financially, but how can I support others on the planet?
Yep.
At this time.
Yep.
I think Emily responded to us up here. Yeah. Oh, great. Thank you. Releasing the word finally resonates. Awesome.
Beautiful. Right. I wasn't even aware of shaking the way of thinking loose. Thank you. I definitely feel more connected and grounded just being present on this call. So
awesome.
Gratitude. Beautiful.
Awesome,
beautiful.
Emily.
So again, everybody, one, you will be able to access this because we are streaming it to YouTube. So the entire piece and all that we've shared is there. It'll be there. We're not going to take it down. We know that many more people will need this. If you feel it's beneficial to you and may be beneficial to others, please share it on your pages, wherever, email it to your friends, wherever you think it will be beneficial. Our goal is always to do what we do every week at CSC. Our mission is clear, right? To awaken the world to the presence of God within and all around us. Celebrate this truth as one family, right? Embody unconditional love, right? Equip humanity to live their greatest lives, even when there's a global pandemic, right? And serve all creation. And so please, by all means, share and continue to support us in doing what we believe that we were created to do and called to do as a ministry and as a spiritual community. We're looking forward to next week. Same place, same time. Join the mailing list or make sure you're following us on social media for the new link. The link that we share next week will be the permanent Sunday link for our weekly gatherings. As you know, and it will be our weekly gathering as long as
we're looking forward to a new way of sharing CSC with the world.
Yeah, absolutely. This is so much fun.
This is
so much fun. It's so cool to see your faces. I want to do so we can see everybody.
Oh, look at that. This is awesome. Hey, everybody.
And I know we have folks connecting from all over. There's West Coast, there's East Coast, there's
Alice. Hey.
Right. Our folks on the West Coast are here. I thought many of y'all were going to tune in later. So it's so cool to see you live. I know we have Chicago in the building. I think, is Trinidad still here? I don't know if Trinidad is in the building.
I think I saw Trinidad.
But I know, we have our global family that's connecting. So it's beautiful to be here with all of you. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. All right.
And with that, let's close our eyes and leave in the vibration that we began.
Yes.
Realizing that we are here now, in the presence of each other, connected in a beautiful way, that we are here now breathing in this air. Yeah. That we are here now as our heart beats and as we hear these words resonate with our spirit, that there is one mind and one power and one presence, and it is equally available right where we all sit in our homes. This one mind and this one power and this one presence is not obstructed or stopped by any external force. It is the force. It is the source of all goodness, all greatness, all truth, all power, and all ease. And we activate it now, because I know that right where I sit, this power and this presence and this ease and this peace is. That right where each of us sit is this power and this peace and this ease. And we allow it to take over our minds and our hearts and unify our consciousness with this divine presence.
Yes.
We let go of any fear that would keep us from seeing the reality on the ground and seeing the truth that is available. From this place of awareness, we say that all is well in the mind of God, and therefore all is well in our minds, that all is well in the experience of this planet, and therefore it is well in our experience.
Yes.
We bring ourselves collectively to this truth. We go out today better than we arrived. We go out today in more power than we arrived. We go out today in more truth than when we arrived. We go out today in more joy and anticipation of the glory that will unfold as our lives today, tomorrow, and into the future. Thank you, Mother, Father, God, for this realization, for this recognition, for this knowingness, and for the surrender of those things that cause us fear. From this place of knowing, I release these words back into the mind that said it's already done, back into the mind that holds it all in complete prosperity. From this place of awareness, I release these words in anticipation, expectation, and knowingness.
Yes.
Together we say, amen,
Amen.
ashe,
Ashe.
and so it is.
And so it is.
We love you all so much.
Yes, yes.
And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Love
All
you.
right. Y'all be well.